So welcome to Workspace. My name is Stacy Zackin. I'm the manager here, and I work for the town of Manchester because the town owns and operates Workspace. Basically, the history of the building, I think it was a pharmacy and maybe something else, and then it became Regal Men's Clothing. Does anybody remember that? So Regal Men's Clothing happened to be founded by my great uncles, my grandfather's brothers, older brothers, who entered the schmata business, as Russian immigrants are wont to do. They and their sister worked so they could send the youngest sibling to school, which is my grandfather. So he became a dentist in Waterbury. They had 4 or 5 stores. They only owned this for a few months before they sold it to the Afters, who remember the synagogue here in Manchester. And then coincidentally, I work here now, so that's pretty cool. What else do I want to tell you? So we are a co-working meeting and gallery space. Basically, the town bought the building from the bank for $1, is the rumor, which is a great real estate deal unless you think, oh, now this municipality has yet another empty building that isn't earning taxes that they need to keep up. So they decided to turn half of the second floor into a co-working space, which was very innovative at the time, especially for a municipality to launch it. The other half was the town's continuing ed department above us, and then Manchester Community College rented the first floor, turned this space into a gallery, had some classes and meetings in the back. Neither the town nor the school had a full-time professional. So 6-7 years into that operation, they said we should get a manager and integrate it. We did. MCC still ran the gallery for about 1.5 years into that, and then they decided to focus on their beautiful campus not that far away, and we inherited the gallery. So now what we are doing, our mission is still to support entrepreneurs and economic development and attract people to Main Street, and artists are entrepreneurs. So in addition to supporting them, it's also a great cultural space to have conversations like this. We do about 7 or 8 art shows a year, which is too many. This is the Perspectives of Time exhibit. So we just asked local artists, which we consider to be New England artists, to submit work and how anything they want to relate it to time. And then I've always been interested in, I'm being Jewish, the Jewish calendar, rituals and traditions, and how life cycle events affect us and help us to connect to our tradition and find faith. So I thought it would be an interesting topic to hear from people more experienced than I. And I also, my parents are at an age where they literally 2 weeks ago entered assisted living. And I'm curious to hear about, I know about all the traditions and rituals around birth and babies, but I'm curious to hear what happens when we're at the last chapter of our life, and for those who believe that there's something else. So that is how this all came to be. We invited clergy, including Pastor Joyce Crutchfield, who was very excited to be here, but unfortunately she had a death in her family today. So she unnecessarily apologizes for not being able to be here. So just to wrap up about Workspace, we have 11 private offices, co-working space up on the second floor, and 7 meeting venues, including this, which is also the largest of 3 art venues. So we're very excited to be here on Main Street and to bring people here. So thank you for coming. I'm going to have the guests introduce themselves. So if you could say who you are, what your faith affiliation is, and what you first thought of when you were invited to speak about time. Reverend Brown, do you mind if we start with you and we'll just go around?
Did you want us to pass the mic? That
Sure.
Yeah.
And this way we can save the recording on YouTube.
She said, Lydell Brown. I am the president and CEO of the Conference of Churches in Hartford. I'm also the pastor of Burning Bush Family Life Center in Waterbury, Connecticut. What did I think about when they first asked me? Leery. But just open to whatever the Spirit says when we get here. So,
I'm Rabbi Randy Konigsberg from Shalom B'nai Israel, up here on Middle Turnpike East. And I've always had a funny relationship with time because time is just, we usually think of it as just a measurement. But from a religious point of view, it's really a part of nature, and I thought it'd be interesting to talk about.
I'm Dan Whitney. I'm the pastor of Manchester Church of the Nazarene right up here on Main Street. We just celebrated our 125th anniversary this year, which makes us awfully young compared to you. And I was interested in the art exhibit here. And there's a painting behind me, the wall behind me by Carlos Mateo. And it's entitled Killing Time, which is a fascinating concept, and I thought maybe we'd have a chance to talk about that a little bit tonight.
Excellent. And if I could just show Pastor Dan's artwork. And I hope you didn't like it too much because you can't take it home because it's sold. Excellent.
My name is, I go by Stan. A lot of people call me Pastor Stan. I do an online evangelical Bible study for the last 40 years out of Hartford. And I was told that I should call by Pat Johnson. So that's all that was necessary. Pat spoke, and I am here. And so one of my favorite subjects is time. She and I talk about time a lot. So I guess she thought that this might be something that I'd be quite interested in talking about, and being a talkaholic in recovery, never pass up an opportunity to run my mouth.
And we can actually send that mic back to those three gentlemen as we have some over here. You're going to keep this one.
Is it okay?
It is on, but it's not as loud. So there you go.
Okay. I'm Reverend Laura Dunfield. I'm an ordained minister with the Madonna Interfaith Community. We are international, and we have members from all different kinds of faiths. We are a church with no walls, and we are called Madonna because we it's Madonna because it's the divine feminine energy, the caretaker, the mother, the nurturer, and that's why we picked the name Madonna. We've been in existence for probably 50 years or more, and we're all over, we're everywhere. And I will be available for autographs. That's my picture right there on the wall. I was part of the time display. I worked for the town for 49 years. So.
Hi, Jeffrey Glickman. I'm here with my wife, Mindy, and we live in South Windsor, Connecticut, where I have served the synagogue there for about 30 years. And when what I thought, well, first of all, I'm really indebted to Stacy and to Workspace. What a wonderful, wonderful place, and any opportunity to help out with that and to meet new people, that'd be great. My question about time, how do we know what time it is? And what do we do with that knowledge?
Excellent. Yes.
I forgot to say what drew me here tonight was I was here looking at my picture, and when I left, I saw the schedule for the upcoming events, and the word spiritual for tonight was what drew me to ask if I could be included, because we are a spiritual group, and we do believe in afterlife. We celebrate solstices and equinoxes and every time celebration that there is, because we are an interfaith community.
So Rabbi Glickman prepared something, so we'll start with him, and then we will build off of that.
Thank you. I mean, how do we figure out what time it is? Time is just a comment about time. Out of all the things that can be measured, how much something weighs, how long a distance is, how big a volume is, even like light, how much light there is, the time seems to be the most elusive out of all of them. However, technologically speaking, we can measure time more accurately than anything else. And because of that, just about every other measurement is based on time. Like distance, how far does light travel? That is a measure of time. And so distance can be in light years, or fractions of that, or how long an electron takes to go around a nucleus. That's how we measure distance. And the way that we measure volume is, well, this distance and this distance and this distance makes a little cube. We call that, a milliliter. And if you fill it with water, well, that's a gram. Well, they're all based on time. All of the measurements are based on time. Because how do we know what time it is? In early days, we looked up. Where is the sun? Where are the stars? The sun is 4 fingers away from the horizon, so you have some idea as to how long it's going to be before it gets dark. When you're old, this is how we figured out what time is. What's blossoming? We figured out what time it was, as Rabbi Konigsberg mentioned, by looking at nature. That's how we knew what time was. And when we did, we saw that the sun goes up and it comes down. Or the sun also comes up and it goes down. And we saw that the leaves fall off and they grow back. We saw that the stars return in their orbits. The time is cyclical, up and down, like a sine wave. Time is circular. And the way that we know what time it is by looking at things. Sundials are circular. Even watches, when we got to get watches, you imagine a pocket watch, the relationship to time. We held it in our hands. Early watches didn't even have a second hand, let alone a minute hand. Who needed to know what time, what the minute was? You held time in your hands, and if you didn't wind it, it stopped. Time was subservient to us, kind of. But then when we strapped them on our wrist, it became like the pulse, like our pulse, and we became subservient to time, especially when we changed time from circles to ever-increasing numbers. You can call the difference between being on time or being timely. The Greeks called it chronos or kairos. One of them is linear, chronos, the other is circular. You can call it rivers and tides. A river is linear, it always moves in one direction. A tide is circular. There are two different spiritual ways of looking at time. Both complement each other. The Bible focuses mostly on the circular. And the way that you know what time it is, it's important to know what time it is, because the time that it is linked to your actions. If you know what time it is, you know the beautiful thing to do in that moment. God made everything beautiful in its time. That's Ecclesiastes 3. And so, is this a time for giving a hug, or is it not? Well, how do you know? Well, you have to look at people. You have to remember history. You have to have a sense for the environment. Stones, right? They're the biggest pain in the petunias if you have a field and you want to plant something. You gotta throw away the stones, but if you want to build a wall, where are you gonna get enough stones? When's the time to gather stones and when's the time to cast them away? I mean, a modern day stone is cardboard boxes. We have way too many of them. You can't get rid of them, but if you need them, how am I going to get one? It's all knowing what time it is. If we know the right time for eating the cantaloupe, if we're in touch with the natural rhythms of the world, we'll eat a lot sweeter and better cantaloupe. But we, unfortunately, try to be on time too much. So a difference is, when's the best time to eat lunch? Was it 12 o'clock, or is it when you're hungry? One of them is linear, 12 o'clock. The other is when you're hungry, which is the best time, of course, is when you're hungry. But if you ran a public school and you told everyone lunch is whenever you're hungry, good luck teaching. So we need both of them. I just like Stan, I couldn't go on, but I see so many other people here.
Yeah.
I'm going to end it.
Excellent. That's a great way to launch. Does anybody have any immediate response to all of that? And it's interesting because if you look at the art, how people have interpreted time, from abstract to concrete to, freedom of time and trying to control it or killing it.
The first question, interestingly, that the Talmud asks is, was the proper time to say the morning prayers? Was the proper time to say the evening prayers? Because, and they didn't have clocks. They didn't, so it had to be based on something. And so they took that as the amount of light that was available. So the question they have to ask is, well, how much light do you need? And somebody said, what? One of them said, well, one of the rabbis would say, well, when I can look out at a field, or look at a house in the field, then I can tell you what color it is. That's when there's enough light. Okay. Another one said, no. He says, when I can look out and recognize that there's other people around me. That's when that's enough. So so you get this feeling that there's a separation between light and darkness, But the one who actually is the most fascinating is who says, when I can look at the face of somebody and I can see if it's my friend or not. You know what I mean? And that's a different way of measuring. You know what I mean? It's no longer making differences, right? But it's bringing people together. And I think that's part of how we also need to look at time. The whole idea of watches and passing time and things like that was so you know time to catch the train. and that's why we have time zones, because depending on where you are, the sun is in a different space in the sky, depending on where you are on the face of the earth. That's just the way that the world turns. But again, as he was saying, for most of the creatures on this planet, there isn't a concept of time. It's just a concept of, where am I right now? Am I hungry? Am I sleepy? Is this a time to hunt, or is this a time to take a nap? Is this a time? And it goes by how you feel, not so much by if you're an animal that sees really well at night, well then nighttime could very well be your busy time. If you're an animal that doesn't see very well at night but sees better during the day, well then the sun moving across the sky is important to you, and to recognize how much time you have to get done whatever needs to be done. In ancient days, they had candles, they had lamps that burned, But by and large, once the sun went down, the candle was just to finish up what you were doing, and then you went to bed, and you slept until it was light again, so you could get back to doing what you needed to do. So these are, and with the understanding, you know, that every time it would go through its cycle, that even though we think of it as linear, it's only linear because every time it goes through its cycle, we're different than at each cycle. We're a little older, we're a little wiser, we're a little, you know, and we have a little bit more experience, and so we're more prepared for the next cycle than we were the cycle before, and so, you know, and those are the kinds of cycles. Those are the kind of cycles that religion likes to break into and say, you know, when you reach this point in the cycle, then this is a moment that you have to pay attention to. When this kind of a thing happens, when it's time to eat, when it's time to pray, when it's time to study, you know, we need to know, you know, because that's during the course of this cycle, we have to allow space for all the things that we want to get done.
I think one of the things about our culture today is, by and large, we tend to worship at the altar of efficiency, trying to get more into less time continually. About 2 years ago, my elderly father moved in to live with us. And I have a fast-paced life, too fast, but I had to make the decision about grocery shopping. And I can get through Stop and Shop by myself in about 10 minutes. But if Dad comes along, it's going to take 35 minutes. And so then I've got to decide what's the value of time, what's the purpose of all of this, and we have to make those kinds of choices, I think, all the time. How do you value efficiency versus the other possibilities that exist? I mean, if it's your father, it's sort of an easy choice, right? We're gonna shop together all the time. But what if it's just the neighbor who's harassing me, and I don't really see that as an opportunity to spend my precious time? I like the question, how do you know what time it is?
Time. But then on the flip side, time is not kind to everyone. Just to share a story, so I grew up in a mainline African American church, one of the oldest African American institutions in America. When I opened my eyes, I saw this church because my dad pastored in this denomination. And then one night, you probably saw the Ten Commandments before, the Ten Commandments. And I was watching the movie, and it was Moses when he went on Mount Sinai and he saw the bush on fire. And out of the bush he says, pull off thy shoes, for where thou stand is holy ground. And that touched me in a special way. And at that moment I knew that it was time that I left the church that I was in, that I had been pastoring for 16 years, and leave my family there. Someone said, I know your daddy's gonna turn it over in his grave. But it was time. It was time that I left. And the reason why it was time that I left, because I heard it so clear, I need for you to build a church where any and everyone feels acceptable. And the point of pulling off thy shoes means that you can come in, let your hair down, and be comfortable and rest in me. So I knew that it was time. But then my bishop from the church I came out of looked at me kind of cross-eyed, because he didn't feel like it was time. And so so this time, as you said, Ecclesiastes said there's a time for everything. I just feel like with so much stuff going on today and so much distraction, where do you get the time? How do you know when it's time to act, when it's time to say no, when it's time to say yes. And so with so much going on, and all over the world, time right now is a premium. I'm going to be 62 this year. My dad and my mother, they only lived to be in their late 50s. So even when I think about time, it messes with me in a different way. So I'm not sure if I'm making any sense. Okay.
How does your faith, if your faith, provide you any either comfort or guidance to maybe interpret time or have a relationship with time?
In that, as long as I know that I wake up tomorrow, that there's more work for me to do. Because I'm of the notion that when I've done all that I was sent here to do, my time is up. So as long as I wake up tomorrow, we have a saying, every day is a good day on this side of the grave, right? And so as long as I know, as long as I wake up, I know I have a chance to do better than I did yesterday. And so that's how I look at time, every day. So we have a saying in the church that now is not the time to take your foot off the gas pedal of prayer, because there's just so much going on, and everyone needs to continue to touch and agree and pray that things work themselves out.
Can I ask a follow-up? How do you balance all that you need to do to fulfill your purpose with having a sense of mindfulness and peace and serenity, if that's possible?
Well, this season of my life, I'm coming closer to the front of the line than I've been, because I realize that me and my wife are not getting any younger. I got some grandkids that are now looking at me. My daughters are grown and gone and done what they're doing, and so I also realize that because I've seen so many people work all their life long, and then all of a sudden their life is gone, and there's some things that they just didn't get a chance to do. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to go to the doctors one day and he said, well, you know what, you're sick. So, I don't want that. So I think it's letting me know that it's time that I put Lydell first, that it's time that I do some things that I might have been putting on the back burner. To be honest with you, now that you're saying that, that's the reason why I drove down to 84 tonight and came here. Simply because it's something different, and I want to be able to experience a whole lot of different things, especially in this season of my life.
Thank you. Go to Laura and then.
So one of the things that perked my interest when I read about tonight was afterlife. Many people in my ministry are hospice volunteers, myself included, and that's my ministry, I feel like. Everybody in my interfaith community, each of us has a different interest, so how we minister to people is how we all function, and my ministry is hospice work. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say, after you, Reverend Brown, I just turned 80. And I'll tell you, a couple of months before that birthday, I was depressed. But then everybody, and I kept talking about it, because I figured the more I talk about it, the easier it will become. And it did help, because every time I said to somebody, every time I went to a medical place, and you have to give your birth date, and last year was 2023, right? So I'd have to say 11/1/1943. Get it? I got this 80 coming up. Well, I guess the more I thought about it and the more I talked about it, it was like, I feel like I'm entering the last chapter of my life. And what do I want that to look like? And what do I want to do with that time that I have left? Well, I worked up until 4 years ago. So I was 76 years old when I finally retired totally. I took an early retirement from my full-time job when I was 56, because I knew I could go right into a part-time job doing the same thing and collect a pension, so what could be better than that? So, and I thought I'd be at that part-time job until I died. And my knee told me something different. because I was teaching exercise classes. So I left that job and I got more involved in the hospice work. And the reason I did was because when my mother was in hospice in 1994, I spent the last 2 weeks of her life with her, and 24/7. And I noticed a lot of really interesting experiences that she had in those last 2 weeks. Dreams that she had that to me were more like visitations. I felt like she was crossing over and coming back, crossing over and coming back, just from the stories that she would tell me from her dreams. And I think that was because when she was first diagnosed with cancer, she was terrified of what was going to happen. And I believe now that the more she traveled back and forth, it eased her fear, and that she felt more comfortable. And so that's why I got into the hospice work, and I've been doing it for 23 years. And I can tell you I have had some incredible experiences. I have seen people reach a hand up. I have heard people call out a name. In my mind, I am positive that someone comes to greet you when it's your time to go, that you're never alone. I firmly believe that. And I also belong to a near-death experience group that meets once a month, and they have these speakers that have been to the other side and come back. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating, the stories. But the common thread is that you don't want to come back, because what you feel there on this other plane is an unconditional love that is just overwhelming. And when people start talking about their experience, they tear up, they get very emotional because of that feeling that they had. And so that's become really how I minister to people, is to help them through that time, that transition period. And I tell some of my stories to a lot of people because it helps them, makes them feel more comfortable about what's to come. I've had people that, like my mom, were terrified. And after I tell them a few of my experiences with other people, some of that fear fades away. And so I feel like that's my purpose in life right now, is to help people with that transition at the end of our time here on earth. Anybody have any questions about that?
Can I make comments to it?
First of all, Laura, I just want to say, it's great because you're above average. Because 80 is about average lifespan. And there was a book that I read last year called 4,000 Weeks, which is how many weeks you get if you live to be 80. And it was called Time Management for Mortals, right? And basically what it says, and I think that this is what you were talking about, and I think that we all kind of look at, is that there really isn't. I mean, what's past is past behind us, and what's coming is totally unknown. So all we have is this moment. All we have is the moment that we have right now. And the question only becomes, what do we do with the moments, the moment that is in front of us? What do we do with the now? Or as one of my friends once put it, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today's a gift, and that's why we call it the present. So,
I like that.
yeah, I did too. I liked it a lot when he told me. So, what do we do with this gift that we have, today? I mean, that you're gonna see somebody, that's as part of your hospice. You're gonna see somebody as part of your ministry. You're gonna encounter something that you may or may not have encountered before, or if you've encountered it before, you haven't encountered it in quite the same way. And you have this moment to be in that moment. And that, I think, is what religion really tries to have us do, is to help us fully be in that moment, to understand that where we are is where God wants us to be right at this moment, because either there's something to learn or something to do, or some way in which we are going to help advance either humanity or our life or our family, or who knows, right? We don't know in the moment that we're in now the effect that moment will have on other people's moments. And what religion tries to do is to get us to be mindful of that, to pay attention to it, and to say, God, what should I do in this moment that will make a difference?
I think that places the current crisis, but I see as one of our major crises, squarely on the table, which is that guy's painting killing time. And all you need to do is spend some time with teenagers or their parents, and you recognize, the super glue effect of their phones to their faces. Mm-hmm. And you say, what is that about? And there's something about this entertainment-oriented culture that we're in, where we have to be entertained, we have to be active, we have to be doing something every second, but we've lost mindfulness. And we no longer feel the responsibility to redeem time. We kill time, or we medicate ourselves with entertainment or anything to keep ourselves from being bored for a second or anything like that. And that the Kairos piece of time is there's a meaningful something that can be done. And if ever our culture needed us to invest a meaningful something, I'm not going to talk politics, but oh my gracious, we're in trouble. We can't talk about things that are controversial without this conversation breaking down into violence. We can't negotiate how to make progress forward because we are so busy killing time and keeping ourselves entertained that we can't do the next right thing. We can't redeem the time. And so we are paralyzed. And understanding what we ought to be doing and having some desire to do it, I think becomes critical for us right now.
Time. I'm a big Matrix movie fan, and there's a line in the Matrix where the guy says, but time. But who has time? And, we have to make time. My birthday was yesterday. I turned 64, young man.
All right. Happy birthday.
But I'm still yet a child in the presence of those that are 80. I'm like one of the kids. I am president of the Greater Hartford African American Alliance, and I'm like the young guy. And most of the people are 70, 75, 80. And my dad's 90. And like 3 weeks ago, he was driving a school bus. But his school bus partners, he didn't come in to work, so he had a minor stroke. He's down in Pennsylvania, so he's not going to be able to drive the school bus anymore. He passed all the stress tests. But him going into the hospital and my sister watching him caused me to think a little bit more finite about time. And, there's a couple of young people in the room, but most of us are seasoned. And, when you're young and you hear, particularly within the Black church experience, it's common to hear there's the part where you testify. And so the older folks say, I thank the Lord that I rose up in my right mind and I have full use of my limbs. And you do the little arm exercises. And that's not a joke as you get older. It becomes very, very real. And so time. But in all of my discussions around time, when we have these discussions with members of my audience on the television program I do, and then also with Pat, I think of time as a false construct. And I brought my visual aid of my hourglass, And I do television, so I'm keenly aware of time. I'm good with clock. I can run a show down to 10 seconds and then go right to the break. But if you do that for 40 years, you should be able to do that. This is time. What passes through that narrow throat in this glass is the moment. And everyone's minute is exactly the same. I look at it as the great equalizer. Everybody's hour is the same. What you do in it is what matters most. How are you spending your time? My youngest is 12. I have grandchildren older than my youngest children. All right, so I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old at home. The house is run by the 14-year-old. Her name is Seven Grace. Her father's a minister. So, the Seven Grace. But if you do this, you can pause time. And that's where we are. So what are we going to do with this time that we've paused? Because the pause is time. We actually live in eternity. We are eternal beings. The question is, where will you spend eternity? So, the distractions come to make sure you don't make the right choices as to where you're going to spend eternity. So, since we're eternal beings, I don't really too much consider and concern myself around time. Because if we serve a God who sees fit to give us the opportunity to pause eternity so that we can do something meaningful in it, then he's quite capable of ordering our footsteps. So like Brother Lydell said, if I wake up tomorrow in heaven, I know that my time on earth is over. But as long as I am here, there's work to do. What am I going to do with that time? I spent last year running for mayor of Hartford. It was a good exercise in the use of my time because I, like he suggested, like to mix up the things that people shouldn't talk about, politics and religion at the same time. And that's always nice and spicy. And so, what are we doing with our time? Are we making a difference in our communities? Are we making a difference in our households? You can't control 10 minutes from now, and yesterday is gone, and so is 5 minutes ago. So we live in the moment. We live in the moment. All we can do is control right here, right now. And I, like Brother Lydell, had determined at the end of the election, after running 4 times in a row, that I have better things to do with my time than to run for people who say that they need your help, only to not really need your help. So I'm always willing to help somebody. But you'll find that people really don't want help. They want someone to kind of listen to them, commiserate. And so I have a policy now. I will help you move your lawn chair up the hill. You carry it 1 step, I'll take it 2. But I am not going to push you up the hill in the lawn chair. And so how we spend our time is important because people will suck your time down like time vampires. And they will use up your time. You know, if you only have 80 years allotted to you, because unto every person is appointed, right, allotment of time. Everybody has a clock. You don't know when the time is. Some would like to know, others don't want to know. But whatever that time is, we are moving toward the end of that time. What are we doing, and are we ready to give an account should our time come between now and 9 o'clock when I go home and eat? What are we doing with our time? How are we spending our time? Are we being useful? Are we helping someone in transition? You know, the knowledge that we have, how are you transferring that to the younger generation or learning from someone who is ahead of you? Because I really believe Methuselah lived as long as the Bible says. And so when you consider that, we are mere infants as humans. We're infants. Imagine if you lived to be 300 years old and you could have a conversation with a world leader and say, I know you think this revolution is a good idea, but look, I've been around. They all end the same. You're just making the same mistake again. And it's just like walking. That's why there's nothing new under the sun, and we seem to keep repeating the same things over and over again because we're not repeating the same things. That's the cycle. of maturing, and we don't live long enough to actually mature beyond acting like adults that are children that can get away with stuff that their children can't get away with. And so, time, how do we spend it?
Rabbi Glickman, I'm interested in the topic of rituals, and I feel like statistically it seems that less and less people are involved in organized religion, which is where you learn the rituals and the traditions that all have a purpose to mark time, to turn the Sabbath to make what would be ordinary into extraordinary or meaningful or holy. So what are your thoughts on that?
Rituals are powerful in that they are vessels of meaning. If you don't have a ritual, you don't have a religion, and someone close to you dies, you don't know how to deal with it. You haven't got you create things, but you're really sort of disconnected. Rituals make you connected to community and make you connected to your past, because the wisdom of your heritage is telling you this is how someone dies. It's a time for falling. That's what time it is. And you should just fall. I could talk a whole lot more about rituals, but I'm fascinated listening to other people. Was there some other aspect about rituals you were?
No, I feel like, again, it's finding that balance between the do and the stopping and reflecting, that religion says stuff about both those actions.
One thing about rituals is they're always at transition points, especially in Judaism. If you know what the before is and you know what the after is, you understand what's going on with this ritual. To paraphrase it, how can we possibly know where we're going if we don't know where we've been? And rituals help with that. We stick a little parchment on a front door, so whenever we come in and go out, we think about the in and we think about the out, and how they're different and how they're stitched together, private, public. We do a ritual when a kid starts talking like this. What's the before, what's the after, where are we reaching towards, how to guide it directly. Rituals are vessels of meaning.
And I think that if we're not purposeful about investing in those rituals, Hallmark will create them for us. And then we will end up with
Loneliness.
yes, feeling that we need to do certain things to meet the cultural expectations that deliver nothing to us, and we just spend money on greeting cards.
So I was listening to your question and listening to all of this talk about time, and the ritual, the religious ritual that talks about linear time is the Sabbath. And so perhaps that's something that one can talk about, because that does put one into the moment when the rest of the week one is busy, doing, God, hopefully, good things that are progressing all of us into a better space, where we're helpful, where we're doing meaningful things. And then there's the imposition of, not in a bad word using imposition of stopping and being. And I think that that's a ritual that is in the faith communities in this space here, where we are confronting time and embracing it and embracing the present. And even if we can't embrace the present moments every day, we're forced, in the Jewish faith at least that I know, to stop and embrace the present and be in the now.
Yes? Rabbi Plavin oversaw the ritual of my bat mitzvah.
Yeah, I remember that night.
It involved a hospital visit. It wasn't
Yes.
that my speech was so great.
The thing about the Sabbath that strikes me in relation to time is that we are told in a very definitive way that we are not in charge. So every week we have to look at the calendar and know what time our Sabbath is going to begin. And it's not in our hands. I can't decide it'll be convenient for me to end my Friday at 6 o'clock and then start the Sabbath. I look at the calendar and it tells me you're going to light the candles and say it's now the Sabbath at 4:18. And that's it. And so Friday is often a hectic race against the clock to be ready for the Sabbath. I have this painting in my study that's a lot of text. And one of the texts in it says, he who has prepared will eat on the Sabbath, and who has not prepared, from what is he going to eat? It tells us that time marches along, whether we like it or not, and we've got to organize our lives to be ready. But then we have to recognize that we have to appreciate what's around us. So as a certain number of minutes, we have to sit back and say, okay, now the race is over. And I have to take 25 hours out to appreciate time, not try to manage it. Another thing, in traditional synagogues, as the new moon is approaching, which the new calendar is lunar, it will be announced that the new month will begin on such and such a day in so many hours and so many pieces. It's very, very definitive. It makes us very conscious that time moves on and we better be doing something worthwhile with it. And just one other little thing. You remember, it used to be that when you went on an airplane, there was a catalog sitting in front of you in the pocket with all kinds of crazy products. And I remember one that it was a watch where you input, I forget how, various pieces of data about your life. When you were born, whether you're a smoker, how tall you are, how much you weigh, all this kind of stuff. And then this watch didn't tell you what time it is, it told you how much time you had left. So, I think that's I use that as a kickoff for a Rosh Hashanah sermon.
One of the things that was a book out years and years and years ago that I never forgot. The book was called Dancing as Fast as I Can. And I didn't even know what the book was about. It didn't matter because I knew what the title was about. There comes a time, speaking of time, when you realize that you're never going to keep up. You're never going to be able to do everything that you want to do. You're dancing as fast as you can, and so you stop. And you realize that when you stop dancing, the world doesn't stop. You just get to watch it go by. And I think that from a religious point of view, that's a good thing. I mean, that you realize that that all the things that are imposed upon us, all the things that we're told that we need to accomplish in life, we'll get done what we will get done. We will accomplish what ultimately needs to be accomplished. And if we don't accomplish it all, and we'll just leave something for somebody else. And that's, I also note that, I should also note here that we don't really see, we really don't know what the future will hold, but sometimes we do. Go back to Laura and her hospice. Sometimes we know what the future holds. And and I think that Laura can tell you that when she first comes across people, there is a certain terror that comes from being able to see too well into the future. If it's close, that's maybe even more terrifying. But even if it's, Dr. White, you've got 6 months to live. It's not that, what am I going to cram into 6 months? Am I going to live? There's a terror that comes with that, and it's, if you're 97 years old and you feel like I've lived a good life and I've done the things that I wanted to get done, you can be at peace with that. But if you're in your 50s, there's so much more I want to do. And what religion comes and tells you is that if there's something you want to do it. If there's, just let it be meaningful. Be prepared to help others, to be kind, and to not be so focused on yourself that you can't see the person next to you. And that, I think, is the crux of it as well. Slow down. On the Sabbath, you just stop. And nothing creative. Don't make anything. Don't create anything. Just be with the world and see it without having to dance your way through it as fast as you can. And it's a more pleasant journey that way.
So as far as rituals, because we are an interfaith community, we have a lot of different rituals because we honor everything that all of our members do. And what I personally like about the equinoxes and the solstices is, like, when I think of spring equinox, I think of new beginnings, because it's the planting time. It's the time of the sun rising. And then when you get to the fall equinox, it's a time of slowing down and going within, and because you're getting ready to hibernate for the winter time. And the winter solstice tells us that it's going to start getting lighter again, and to look forward to that lightness. So we celebrate a lot of us follow Native American traditions. That's what I love about it, is that there's so many different diversities in our community that it's really quite interesting to learn about all of them. And getting back to the hospice thing again, I don't know how all of you feel about if somebody told you that you were in hospice, but I come across families that don't want their loved one to know that they're in hospice. And for me, I just think that's so wrong, because I would want to know how much time I have left. There might be things that I need to do. There might be people I need to forgive. There might be people I need to ask forgiveness from. They're just, maybe I need to tell you what I want, what I want my death to look like, and what I want done with my body, and whatever. I just think that it's just a thing for you to think about.
Is things you didn't tell your family.
Yeah. But there's families that don't want their loved one to know that they're in hospice, and I'll never understand that. Somebody down there have a question?
I just had a question I wanted to raise to the group.
What is your name?
My name is Lieber Lester III. I wanted to hear your thoughts on shared time, because I think we've now hit a point in the conversation where we're acknowledging that the time that we have and use in our bodies does affect other people. And, just to see what you all think about that concept.
What is shared time by you?
I think of shared time as the time that we don't know is nourishing others. The time that maybe in the moment, in the course of a conversation, we may not see this big change in who we're talking to or working with, but in a year, maybe far past when we see the person or work with them, now something we've said or done clicks.
Beautiful concept. There's a wonderful story about that Rabbi Lawrence Kushner tells about. Sorry,
that Lawrence Kushner tells about that life is like a jigsaw puzzle, and that your job is to put all the pieces together of your life. But you should know that some of the pieces in front of you don't belong to your puzzle, and that some of the pieces of your puzzle are missing. And one of the things that you do in life is you go around and give people pieces of the puzzle that they need for their puzzle, and then sometimes people give you pieces of your puzzle, that you need to complete your puzzle. And that's what souls do, go back and forth, sharing what they need in order to be complete. And every time, and sometimes you just realize that something happened in that moment, that this person got something from me that I didn't even know belonged to them, but they got something from me, and in that moment, I'm a messenger of God. I'm a messenger of the divine. I mean, that I have done what I was created to do, was to see to it that you got the piece that you needed to complete your puzzle. And I know that sometimes people tell me things, and I experience things, and I know in that moment, they've given me something that I need, to complete my puzzle. So, and you never know when that one little moment of kindness, when that one little moment of gratitude, when just that a word that you say to somebody, or two or three, or just something you just threw off, just because it seemed funny to you in the moment, but somebody caught that and said, wow, I just never looked at it that way before. And when that happens, that's God working through you. And so yes, it's all interrelated. And if you were to go around the room and ask people what are the most important moments in their life, they would all be, I would suspect that they would all be relational, about other relations with others. This was the time I got married. This was the time that I had kids. This was the time that I recognized that this is what I wanted to do with my life. I mean, the relational stuff. I do this with teenagers. I'll say, give me 5 things that if you had all the money in the world that you would buy. I'll make a cop up that list like that. They have no trouble with that at all. And then I tell them, think of all the times in your life where you felt, were the most important moments in your life. That takes them a little longer. The teenagers, they haven't got that many moments, right? So, but take them along, but they come up with it. And the 2 lists are vastly different. I can almost predict what will be on the buying list. But I tell them, I said, you're being lied to. Because look at the most important moments in your life are not something you bought. The most important moments in your life are when you went on vacation with your parents. That when you got married, when you met your first girlfriend, when you realized in school that this was something you were good at. It's all relational. The most important moments are all relational. Right? It's not, and that's something, that's time well spent.
I have a question over there. I'm going to actually turn the heat up. But go ahead.
Well, okay. I just like what you just said, Rabbi, a lot. And for myself, I find that the best use of my time is something like hospice, because I have worked with people on that level. It gives me more than I ever feel I'm giving them. And I think that use of our time, it's important to find out for ourselves how we gain from the use of our time too, and what we do and what it means to us and makes us better people.
I want to chime in for a second. So about 19 years ago, I was assisted doing a funeral in Waterbury. And it was a young man, I can say it, his name was Christopher Love. And he had just defended his dissertation, and he was getting around saying, I'm getting ready to be Dr. Love. And he went to a party, it was a fundraising party, And some person who did not like him and was kind of jealous of his life walked up to him and shot him point blank and killed him. And the church that he was from was the church that I was assisting. And I had been going down there to assist because it was a large church, and we were doing funerals like every week, like 2 or 3 a week. And it got to the place where it was like business almost. And I remember the pastor said, he said, "Reverend Brown, will you go up and do the prayer of comfort?" Sure. So I went up there, had my pastoral look on, and go up there and do it, and all of a sudden I felt like people were hitting me in my back. And what it was, I was actually feeling their hurt. And I remember just getting myself together, and I could hear I could hear God saying to me, "Don't you ever do that again. I called you to administer to them, not to treat this as a business." And so it was after that time where whenever I would do a funeral, I would realize that I need to be there for the family, because I'm one to feel as though the person in the casket has gotten everything they're going to get from this world. So the funeral is really for the family. So I would walk with the family, and I walked with them in a different way. And I remember one family asked me, "Where did you learn this from?" Where did I learn what from? How to be so kind. How to be patient with others. Because funerals sometimes can bring out the worst in folk, you know? So, fast forwarding, we have the pandemic. And all of a sudden, I have people who are not members of my church asking me to do the eulogy and do the gravesite ceremony for a loved one, because someone had told them, "You guys are hurting, you need to go see Reverend Brown." Okay. So as I was doing one, I looked over, and there's this place in Waterbury called Potter's Field. Potter's Field is for people who do not have life insurance, and they put just a little tag there. And I looked over there, and I started just breaking up, because it looked like a war zone. There were so many tabs over there. And so what I'm saying is that when you said shared, we never know when God is going to put us in a place where he's going to use us to share what he has placed inside of us. And lastly, don't get angry at me, okay? Don't get angry at me. I had a member who went to hospice. She actually is still alive. There's only one other person who has lived with the virus longer than her, and his name is Magic Johnson, and she don't have his money. Okay? But she was put in hospice. And the family heard that she was put in hospice, and they went and divided up all of her goods. And she had the nerve to get better and come home. Because it happens. It happens. Yeah, it happens. And all I'm saying is that God is still in charge. You know what I mean? Doesn't matter how much we plan or what we do or what we put in place. At the end of the day, God is still in charge, and I think sometimes he does that. The word tells us that he will do certain things to sober us up. Sometimes we can just be sleepwalking, and he does things just to sober us up. But yeah, that was a great question that you had there.
Does anybody else have questions? Because we are going to end on about 8 minutes, so I want to be timely.
I didn't exactly have a question, but we've talked a little bit about ordinary time, and we've talked about ritual times, very important in the faith traditions, and then the subject of shared time came up, and that really brings us into our experience of time. And so I just wanted to touch on, let's say in music, for example, time is based not so much on outer nature as in what goes on inside of us. So there's the rhythm of our breath, of our heartbeat, and of walking. And those really are the basis of time in music. But I think the most important time is the time that we spend in communion with our Creator. And that's a special kind of time. When we're in ordinary time and we get anxious, what happens? Time contracts, and there's just never enough of it, But when we get in touch with, well, what is our purpose? even what is our objective, rather than our list of tasks, then there's a lot of time. And in those very special moments, then time really seems to expand, doesn't it? Especially when we're in love, whether we're in love with a human being or with God, it's an expansion. And I think that expansion is what I look for and what I enjoy.
I think the balance I always have trouble finding is centering on that experience of time. But I think back to the book of Esther, and I say, for such a time as this, we are here. And I look at our national mess, and I say, for such a time as this, I'm here. Do I have a role in this beyond trying to be a peacemaker in my community? I suspect that I don't, but that balance seems so difficult to achieve in a way that's satisfying anyway.
One of the things that we've talked a lot about being present in the moment tonight. I think we all kind of agree on that one. Seems like that being present in the moment is really important. So where are we otherwise? You know, we can tend to be in the past. We could be all hung up on the past, what happened, what didn't happen, what shouldn't have happened, you know. And we could be hung up on the future, what's going to happen, or I hope it doesn't happen, or I'm not sure I can handle it if it happens. You know, it's possible to be somewhere else other than the present moment, up in our heads, stuck in our feelings, preoccupied by, you know, something in the body. But to be present in the moment is a real, you brought up the word mindfulness, you know. To be present in the moment is a skill. It's a learned skill that can be cultivated more and more by being present in the senses, of learning to be present in our hearing, in our seeing, in our touch, and especially being present in our breath. That seems to be one of the biggest keys. Is, you know, if you're not in your breath, it's almost a guarantee you're not in the moment, because somehow the breath brings us into the natural rhythms of the body and allows a certain energetic connection to the moment. You know, when I think about being present in the moment, one of my favorite things is to hike on a hot day in the forest, where, you know, you go through a certain kind of difficulty of going through the sweat, you know, and you go through the uncomfortable place, but you get into a rhythm. And then all of a sudden, everything just starts to come alive. You know, the sensations come alive, the sounds come alive. You begin to feel connected to the plants and the animals and the birds and in your body. That, to me, that's an example of being present in the moment. But those are things that we've had so much engineered out of our lives by technology, and especially by social media, and you know, this thing here, our now posture is this one, you know, this is the way we live. But I'm so grateful for this conversation, you know, to have this conversation so broad, because it's such a critical thing in a time like this, where what we have is a crisis of meaning in our world. We don't know what's real anymore. We're having our very sense of reality challenged by extremely high technology, and it's going to ramp up this year with the AI. So for us to become able to be present in the moment and have a lock on what reality is a very important thing for our survival. It's something we can do for ourselves and something we can do for each other, because there's nothing better than having a sense of certainty about what's real and meaningful. That gives us grounding and stability, ability to navigate. This has really been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, there's in the movie Bridge of Spies, the lawyer is taking the defendant to court. It's a very serious trial, And he turns to the defendant, and the lawyer turns to his client. He says, "Are you worried?" And the defendant looks at him and says, "Will it help?" That's when somebody says, "I'm so worried about the future." I say, "Will it help?"
As we wrap up, first of all, I want to thank you all for spending your time here with us tonight. It was a big unknown, especially for the panelists. So thank you all. It's been very meaningful, and I agree we need more of these moments. But I'd love for maybe 3 people to share with us what you're taking away, either some new information or perspective, or something that you've been reminded of that you might want to revisit. Anyone?
Yeah.
You're on.
I just want to thank you for.
I think you have to just hold that close.
I just want to thank you for a really good discussion. I think what really struck me right now is being in the present, not living in the past, not living in the future. And I just wanted to share this one thing. I ended up just getting a little puppy recently, which I thought would be sweet, but it turned out to be a really lot of work. And I remember going out at 5 o'clock in the morning in the pitch black, holding the leash going, please, please, please pee. And I was like, I want you to get this over with. But what happened was this lovely little puppy has moved me to seeing things that I wouldn't have seen. Like I have seen so many beautiful sunrises. And one night I went out about 11 or 12. No one's on the street, it's quiet, it's cold, and it's just him and I. And I walked out the door, and I looked up in the sky, and it was cold and crisp, and the stars were out, and the moon was out, and there was beautiful clouds, and it took my breath away. And in that moment, I was so grateful for that moment, to be taken out of time, just a regular life, to be given. It's such a gift to have that moment. I can't explain that. You know, it's just that wonderful moment. And I probably wouldn't have had it had I not gotten this little puppy that really pushed me to beyond myself.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I don't have anything erudite to say, other than thank you for the 4,000 weeks. My sister's going to turn 80, and we're about to celebrate, and I'm going to remember 4,000. And I also, so I'm 64 years old, and had the privilege of going to the doctor, and the first thing she said was, oh, next year, which is the 65 mark, I guess, yeah, magic happens. Like, yeah. So thinking about time like that, and you're shared. I realize that there's 26 of us in the room, and each minute is 26 minutes. And so that as we leave today, I feel blessed to have been in a room with all y'all from different places and different spaces, and I hope I'll see you again.
Thank you. Anyone else before we wrap up? Well, thank you so much on behalf of the town of Manchester and Workspace. We hope that you will think of us when you have visitors in town. We change our art every 2 months or 2.5 months. We're open every second Saturday, and for those of you who observe Shabbat on Saturday, give us a call. We can be open by appointment for individuals or groups to come, and we just really thank you for your time and wish you a pleasant night. Thank you. Happy New Year.